Everybody for tuning in. We're back with another episode of the InterDrone Podcast, your 30,000-foot view of the commercial drone industry. My name is CJ Smith, joined today with Michael Pehel, the chairman of InterDrone, and we have three fantastic guests from the Virginia region, which we're really excited to have on. Amber Wilson, manager of Aviation Technology for the Virginia Department of Aviation. We're also joined with Scott Drew, project manager at ATA and the Virginia Fix project, and John Eberhardt, CTO of ATA and the program manager for their UAS practice. We're really excited to have these three on today. We're going to talk about the Virginia Flight Information Exchange, or Virginia Fix, the Virginia Department of Aviation, and the progress they're making in Virginia. Amber was just telling me offline that the state of Virginia was voted as the #1 state to do business in for drone companies, which is extremely exciting. And then we're going to talk about some of the work that Amber and her team are doing to get drones into classrooms, to help with drone education, and kind of broader public perception of this technology and these tools. So guys and girls, thanks again for being here. If we could go down the line and you guys briefly introduce yourselves, talk about some of the work you do in drones, and then specifically what you're focused on right now with Virginia Fix.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and kick us off. Thank you for the opportunity just to kind of share what Virginia is doing regarding unmanned systems, drones, all the different words that we use today. And I'm sure they'll be evolving and changing in the months and years to come. So I'm Dr. Amber Wilson with the Virginia Department of Aviation, and I have the privilege of managing and leading our aviation technology sector here at the Department of Aviation. With that, I get to be involved in all the cool things going on, all the emerging technologies such as air taxi, unmanned systems, and our cool project, the Virginia Flight Information Exchange. With that, that's a sliver of my work. I also get the privilege to educate and train our up-and-coming next generation with education fairs and science projects and building drones and drone camps and those things. And then I also on the backside get to be involved in the development of policy and really shaping the drone industry as well as other aviation technology and policy here within the Commonwealth. Additionally, I get to serve on the Governor's Aerospace Advisory Council as well as a number of other unmanned systems boards across the state to really just bridge the gap and have those conversations about what UAS is looking like here in the state of Virginia and how we all can collaborate together to really continue to make that Virginia hold on to the #1 spot to do unmanned business here in the United States. So with that, that's kind of my little introduction, but I want to toss it to my incredible team that we couldn't have done Virginia Fix without, and that's John Eberhardt with ATA, and then he'll introduce Scott Drew after that. John, take it away.
Thank you very much, Amber. Yeah, we're very excited and proud to support and partner with the Department of Aviation. It's really a visionary organization. And what's neat about the Flight Information Exchange is it's been about a year and a half in coming. It was born out of the UAS work group and the subgroup that identified that there's really a wealth of data and information in state and local government in Virginia, right? And the other thing that's really interesting is that oftentimes state and local government, they're both a kind of regulatory enforcement body, but they also have their own programs, so they're operators as well. So they see both sides of the coin. Yeah. And what we identified was this need to facilitate and share information. So what's interesting is we have a bunch of background intellectual property because of our UAS practice. So in the course of those discussions, we said to the Department of Aviation, well, we could make a grant of background IP to the state, and we can collaborate to create this information sharing network and support better situational awareness, better safety in Virginia, right? And also make an open network so that state and local government can share with each other and with industry. And so it's getting a lot of really great response and traction. And so we're very excited to be part of this program. And I actually will introduce Scott Drew now, because the person who day to day handles a lot of those details is Scott. So, I get to be, this, a senior executive or whatever you call me. But Scott actually does all the work. So Scott, over to you.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Amber. Yeah, I agree. This has been a great project. It's been a whole lot of fun and really interesting in digging in and getting this off the ground. I'm the project manager, so I go to a lot of meetings and take a lot of phone calls and work with Amber to engage the different local agencies throughout the state and onboard our users. And when this launched, we were onboarding one-on-one just to make sure that folks from the different parts of the state were getting the best they could out of the tool, and also getting feedback from these different types of users for their specific use cases with this tool. Because even though all of this is in the UAS industry, there's a whole bunch of different use cases throughout the state, from first responders, law enforcement, to the Department of Forestry, Department of Energy, and each of them have different needs with the tool. So in onboarding these folks, it's been really great to kind of get in the weeds in that regard. I think that the growth of this industry is going to be exponential, and we're real happy to be on the ground with Virginia.
And we're going to get a demo of the tool at the end of this podcast. So for anybody that's just listening, definitely check out the InterDrone YouTube channel, and you can watch that demo. For anybody, maybe John, can you give us an overview? How do I get value from the fix? Let's say I am a government agency. What does that process look like?
So I think, CJ, that's a great question. So in essence, if you think about it, the business goals of the fix are twofold. So one was to support information sharing between and among state and local government. It should reassure operators in the industry in Virginia that state and local government wants to make sure that they deconflict their operations and any guidance that they provide to the industry. So part of the reason, so that's one of the first business goals. And so part of the reason this program exists is to support that information sharing, coordination, and deconfliction amongst government. Mm-hmm. The other business goal is to make as much of that information as is reasonable, given security and privacy concerns, directly available to the UAS industry. And so how that works, let me talk about how industry and operators get data, and then I'll talk about government. So from a technical perspective, how the industry gets data is you can get it in two ways. There is a public website where you can go and search, and you can identify advisories. They're called advisories because they're intended to provide information. They are not regulations; they are advisories. So you can go to the website as a member of the public, and you can see things. We also are setting up a programmatic access program because of the FAA's Lance USS program. There are about 20 or so private companies that have been certified by the FAA as knowing how to handle and provide and manage this kind of data for UAS operations. So the programmatic access is open to any FAA USS. I believe Amber has the final numbers because she runs the program, but my understanding is that I think 5 to 6 of them have already reached out to us, and we're in the process of onboarding 4 of them right now. There will be onboarding a few more as well, so that as an operator, right, whether you're a private operator or government operator, you can use your USS flight planning tool to get this information. So in terms of putting information in from the government side, we set this up 2 ways. So one, government agencies can upload ArcGIS files. As we know, Esri ArcGIS is a very common platform for geospatial planning in government, so that they can upload files, and that's part of that wealth of data and wealth of information that the Commonwealth and its local governments have. Right, all of this information that operators can use in terms of building heights, population density, sensitive infrastructure. The other way that information can get in is the fix, and this is where the demo will come in. The fix has a web tool for state and local government officials to be able to go in, identify what kind of operation it is, create a shape on a map, and publish that out to the community. The use case there would be, you're a fire chief or a pilot officer with the sheriff's department in the field, and there's an emergency and you need to put a drone up in the air, or just advise pilots that, hey, you may not want to fly your vehicle through this 5-alarm fire because it might not come out the other side. And so we're going to be demonstrating that tool. And I think an important point is that the interface from a government perspective, and this is kind of passing it back to Amber a little bit, that interface, how governments are onboarded to the tool and how they're given guidance as to how to publish information is managed by the Department of Aviation. So that is a key part of the strategy, the data management strategy, to ensure that the information coming out of FIX is actually quality, authoritative information, and not just stuff.
Right. Amber, can you talk to us a little bit about the Virginia Department of Aviation's history with drones and UAS?
Sure. So I would say it's about 5 years building. So our current director, Mark Flynn, has been with the agency almost 2 years now. So prior to him, there was some conversation going on about drones. And I think at that point, many states were kind of hands off right across the United States. You had your 2 or 3 states that were kind of, I don't want to say forward leaning, but they certainly were the ones that kind of started experimenting with what state agencies how they would use drones and what they would do with them. So Virginia was one of those. They didn't make it necessarily public knowledge. They spent many years of just having conversations. And so when I came on board, so fast forward to about 2 years ago, the conversation to the previous director and now the current director was, there's so much emerging technology. There's many things going on with drones specifically. We really have to create a position for this. So the fall of 2018, it was building up for about 3, 4, and 5 years to really formulate what this position would look like. And then in the fall of 18, they put together the new job line, I guess, for the state, and they put that through and got that approved. And so in the spring of 2019, April of 19, I came on board. So I've been on board since April of 2019. So it's a brand new position with the state. And before, there was a number of different people working on different aspects, maybe the education aspect of drones, integrating that in the classroom. And then there were others focused on really the legislative section of that with our director. But there wasn't just a sole person dedicated to that. And so I'm very excited. The state was very excited to finally get that line approved and to really dedicate the time and resources for one individual to spend with that. And I think John and Scott can both speak to this, as well as our other partners across the state, that this was something that our department certainly needed. Our agency needed to do that. And it's really kind of bridged the gap between industry and the state and government, but also the gap between education and industry, right? So this year, Senate, there was SJ 30 that came out that kind of was, it marks the Virginia Department of Aviation to look at and examine the economics between education and industry. What are the gaps that are missing, and how do we bridge those gaps? Are we really educating our young folks about drones and other technologies to get them ready for college? And then after college, what is going on between our not only K-12, but our research institutions and our institutions? And what does industry really need? Are we teaching all these things that industry doesn't really care about? So we're really trying to align them in various aspects. And so from about 5 years ago to me today, about a year and a half into this, we've done a number of things, I believe, in the last year and a half to include, like you said, securing that number one spot to the UAS business in Virginia. We're pretty proud of that.
So what are some of those gaps in more detail? Because, I mean, I'm always big on education. We've been big supporters of open source just to get more hands on the problems. So what are the gaps that you're seeing from kind of your local area?
So as of right now, that working group is getting off the ground, because that just became law, technically July 1. So by next year, we'll have that full report. But right now we're looking at boards and the different key people to put on them between your research institutions and then the UAS companies here in the state of Virginia, as well as industry. So it's really pulling together the key people. Some of the gaps that we are seeing is we're not capturing at a younger age. We, as a department, spent much of our time focused on the 9th and 10th graders. But what we're seeing is that if we don't capture them at not even the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, but really that 3rd and 4th grade, then you're not going to capture them later on. One thing I'm pretty excited about is one of the things in our education division is we do teacher grants. And within the department, many people don't know that, but we do teacher grants, and they can apply for them, different amounts of money. And this past year that we just finished up this fiscal year, over 75% of them were teacher grants for drones. There were requests to support drones in some capacity. And so for us, that's pretty exciting. And to see pictures, I was actually just looking at my desk because I have pictures that they send in of them building drones from everything from paper to wood to flying drones. And so we have that. We did bridge that gap a little bit, but we're continuing to push that forward. And some of the other incentives in the education division is specifically doing like art contest, that we create a calendar each year that we disseminate across the Commonwealth. We haven't yet got a drone in there, so we're really pushing that from our constituents and citizens, as well as the young kids. We do photo contests and art contests, as well as a number. I was looking at my list of other things: educational fairs, young eagles, women can fly. So we're really trying to capture them at a younger age versus that high school when they kind of already started to decide.
They're hardened already, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
One of my favorite things is to see the younger kids get so excited. And by younger, I mean like your 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And they start asking questions about drones, or they'll say, well, that's technically lift, or they'll try to correlate these terms that they think they kind of know about it. But to see their minds really working. And the best part is we support the Military Aviation Museum. They have an educational coordinator there, and the Virginia Department of Aviation partially funds that position. Last summer, they had their first 2 drone camps, and they were highly successful. Obviously, for COVID, we couldn't have them this year, but we're hoping to bring them back. And part of that is teaching them how to build drones, but also how to fly them and what jobs are available with them. And so to give the broad spectrum of aviation is more than being a pilot. Aviation is more than working at an airport. Aviation is air traffic control. It's drones. It's teaching. It's many more things. And so we earlier this year created a number of commercials that air on TV across the Commonwealth that were really targeted towards certain audiences. So that's another incentive that we did to try to capture the younger audience.
Yeah, and Amber, this is John. If you don't mind my adding a thought,
Absolutely.
I live in a town called Winchester, Virginia, which is kind of a small to medium-sized city. It's about 20,000 people. The county has another 80,000. And, it's a town that has traditionally been in ag and manufacturing. And as the economy is changing, one of the things that a lot of these, suburban and rural communities really need are good jobs, right? Good jobs, and good jobs for people that don't have the means or the time or the resources to go get a master's degree, a PhD, even a college degree. And I think Amber made a really good point. Aviation is not just about being a pilot. And so because of the growth of this industry, there are going to be a lot of service coordination, and tech jobs that can actually fill the hole that a lot of those kind of blue collar manufacturing and ag and logistics jobs are leaving, right, as those industries change. And so what's really neat, the collaboration around the fix has actually started a conversation here in my hometown about what can be done here to create jobs. And so I think everyone is familiar with Charles Werner and drone responders, right? So I've been talking to our local public safety about how they could work with Charles to create programs. And Charles is very keen on how to use that to support education. So I think one of the gaps that's a general economic gap about, quality jobs, right, for high school graduates, the UAS industry has a real opportunity to fill that gap and to do it pretty quickly.
What is it, John, you like to say? With the UAS industry growing, now every town has an airport?
Yep. Every town has an airport, whether they want it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Speaking of Charles Werner, drone responders, Amber, I know you did a webinar with Charles maybe a month or two ago, but drone responders just came out with the 5 C's, principles for public safety drone use, for first responders and police departments and other government agencies. I think public perception of drones is, it's a very interesting topic. I feel like it's a polarizing topic. You have people that are either in favor or they kind of feel threatened and they don't enjoy seeing drones flying above them. What are some of the things you guys are doing in Virginia to help with public perception, bring transparency to government agencies that are using drones? And again, it's educating the public. It may be different than getting drones into classrooms, but it's still a big, important part of education for the industry as a whole.
Sure. So Charles is fantastic. I will say he is one of our users in our user group. Drone Responders has been a huge support of Virginia Fix. So when I speak a little bit later about him, he's just incredible to work with on that public safety, the front. And so drone responders is one of those users for our Virginia Fix. So across the Commonwealth, it's kind of an interesting perception. You have those that super support drones, and then you have those that like drones, and then you have them that just don't understand why is someone flying over my house, or why. You have to really just spend the time educating them. I have a couple of citizens who call me directly, and sometimes it's an hour powwow, and just really spending that time. But what I've learned is taking that time with that one individual has now transpired into telling 2 or 3 people who have then called and said, so told me this, or how can I get involved? And so that has transpired into a list of what I call UAS stakeholders across the Commonwealth. And these are just our citizens that aren't tied to industry, that are not tied to anyone. So every time something goes out, whether it's the DOAV UAS working group or the House Bill 742 that we'll speak about in a little bit, I try to keep them apprised that way. Another great way is we do a newsletter that we send out here at the department, and UASs have a section of that. The Center for Innovative Technologies Unmanned Systems Center also does a newsletter from across the Commonwealth, and we try to submit that as well to keep our constituents really apprised of what's going on. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is having them participate in certain activities, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a in-person flying drones, asking questions, to be able to participate in those capacities. And then also if any regulations coming down, is to really push the public comment. We really want to hear from the public and what they have to say about it, or even the industry, right? So Virginia Fix was and is an amazing platform, but sometimes if people aren't educated, they make their own mind up. And so we have to dispel myths. But the minute they hear more about it, they understand that what it is and what it isn't. One of the examples is we are working with an airport that is looking to create a UAS test site at their airport. But the manned community, it's a smaller rural airport, and it'll be a fantastic location. So we've been working with them for probably 14 or 15 months. And we decided to do a workshop really to pull the FAA, our like drone responders, some other companies and organizations that would test fly there, to really bring them and have this conversation like a town hall or a workshop, so to speak. That was supposed to take place in May. So we do create those opportunities to really educate the manned community and the unmanned community on the usefulness of drones and how they can be beneficial. The county I live in, ironically, I've been kind of trying to help my community. I live in King George County, Virginia, and they are using drones. I meant to tell John and Scott this. They're using drones to do land surveying instead of having that one person come out and to assess our properties for taxes. They're using drones. And so our community had no idea they could be used for that. And so just spending the hour educating my community on what they can be used for, who they can reach out, how they can stay apprised of that information, and really sharing with them that an unmanned aircraft is still an aircraft, whether you like it or not. They have permission to fly over your house. Now, obviously, they can't be spying and doing some other things, but to them, they didn't understand that. And so to spend the time in the community for us in Virginia has been very crucial to getting the ground and grassroots efforts to support incentives like the Virginia Fix. One incentive that I meant to mention earlier when we talked about education, and I was so excited when I pulled up in the parking lot. So our team here doesn't even know this. So I pulled up this morning at like 6:50 in the morning, and the Icon 5 was out there. And so the VSATS board is a 501c3 here within the Virginia Department of Aviation, and it's created just for research and educational needs. And so it really devotes education and time and technology so that it supports the remote tower. Long story short, they are supporting our efforts, and they helped us purchase an Icon 5. Now, it doesn't have the engine, but it has and the parachute, but has everything else from avionics to the wings that fold out and all that. So we'll be able to take that along with a custom trailer to educational fairs or to trade shows and different things, and really give the community a hands-on experience of an aircraft.
So it seems like a common theme is exposure. So like when people haven't been exposed to the technology, they're more anxious about what it's doing. But
Correct.
Simple, like I saw this with my own family before I even owned a drone personally. My cousin's fiance had bought one, And everybody at the dinner table was complaining about what he would do with it. And he's like, me? And then he brought it over for, I think it was Easter. And when everybody saw it, oh, that's cool. They got inspired by it. And it's a process, but I think the more people are out there seeing what these things can do and the benefits they have for their communities, the more it becomes more like a fire truck or a service that we're all accustomed to.
You're right. And I think it's been interesting at really just getting, like you said, getting them plugged in where their sector is. So maybe it's public safety, and maybe it's our sheriff's department doesn't know all the federal and state regulations. And that's even a learning curve. They don't know what they can enforce and what they can't enforce. So really getting them plugged into their sector and how they can best support it. Or maybe it's the real estate industry, or maybe it's a state park that's trying to figure out, where do we fall? It's really getting them. We've been great in being that conduit to get them plugged in where they need to. Go ahead, John Scott.
It's all about engagement, right? Yes. And you're absolutely right. Exposure. And one of the things when we were putting Virginia Fix together was providing that window for the public to learn more about UAS operations at the state and local government level. So there's a public-facing site that allows folks to search for advisories, whether it be UAS operation or incident or any other type of advisory on the site itself. Now, of course, there's security restrictions in place for certain operations that may be going on that are at the restricted level, whether it be for law enforcement or emergency response, so that there's no direct impact to those operations from a public operator. But the tool allows folks to post advisories even without the specific details to say that something is going on here. But I think transparency has been part of the conversation since day one. Yes. and increasing engagement. And that's one conversation that I have all the time with onboarding users is this tool is as strong as the amount of effort put into it in terms of posting advisories. So if you want to build that relationship with your community as an operator or as a agency, use it for that and talk about it, and get people engaged with it. So.
Yeah, and actually, Scott, you pretty much just said what I wanted to add, which is great. But then the only other two things I would add is this fall we're working on some social media interfaces with the tool, so that as local government and state agencies and public safety are posting advisories and information to the tool, it'll show up on Twitter feeds, et cetera. It'll be geolocated, so people will be able to see those things. And I think kind of a final point as we're talking about is we've been talking about this community engagement and transparency principle. That's the first principle of the 5 C's that drone responders has come out with.
Mike, I think you even mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago that the electricity utility company in your neighborhood they were doing inspections when they had some advertisements running to let people know what was coming. And we kind of talked about how some of these government agencies almost need a marketing campaign for these initiatives to educate, to provide transparency, and to build confidence from the public. If you have anything, Scott, otherwise.
I was just going to say, I think about this stuff all the time, which is probably a good thing since this is what I do. But with COVID and with local economies changing because of that, the UAS industry, I think, is going to, for better or worse, get a push from how we've had to adapt with our day to day. And I think that communicating has definitely changed in how a lot of people communicate day to day, right? I mean, we're doing this over video. I'm on video all the time. People aren't, for better or worse, meeting for coffee and happy hours and elevator conversations and that kind of thing. But, the flow of goods is got to keep going, and information, and transparency is key.
So, I want to talk a little bit about Drone Up, how they partnered with Virginia Center for Innovative Technology to kind of determine how drones can help with critical deliveries during the coronavirus pandemic, and specifically under the current Part 107 regulations. I I know, Amber, you mentioned you don't work directly kind of on that project, but what insight could you provide us, about these deliveries that DroneUp is doing and out there in Virginia?
Absolutely. So I have the privilege of serving on CIT's Unmanned Systems Advisory Board for their Unmanned Systems Center. So I have some insights and then some that are not yet released. So stay tuned for those. So what I will say is that DroneUp, as well as a number of other local companies here, other USS providers, have seen exponential growth. I think we've seen Wing specifically in the news about how their package delivery and their incentives during COVID has increased like 5,000%. They had an incentive of delivering textbooks this summer to students across one of the counties. I believe that was Fairfax. DroneUp specifically, we support them as well as Wing and our other USS providers or any other smaller drone company here. But this one particular, they have an extensive report that is due out. And so if anyone wants that report, they can contact us. We'll have a link on our websites, but specifically the Center for Innovative Technology has an Unmanned Systems Center, and Director Tracy Tynan would be the perfect one to answer all the in and out questions for that. So I would direct everyone towards her or our website to get her information on that. But we've seen how, in general, how smaller drone companies or even larger ones have been impacted and how they've really helped with situations like COVID or disaster, or we have hurricanes coming. And so we have other states who we've had conversations with. And so we've seen the use of drones increase exponentially with COVID and then also with natural disasters in general. So I'm pretty excited, and I get excited to see these companies think new and innovative ways to use drones and just to pivot quickly. And DroneUp was one of those to do that. So I'm excited to see that full report soon.
All right. Yeah, kudos to Virginia and DroneUp for making that happen. Amber, you also mentioned about House Bill 742. What can you tell us about the upcoming bill? What is this going to mean for the drone industry?
Absolutely. So I get excited about things like this. Some people probably don't. But what we're seeing in industry is that right now in Virginia, there's not a lot of conversations about what you can do, where you can fly, where you can get your information from. So one of the key things, and this will tie into later when we have a different discussion, but this year our General Assembly has passed House Bill 742, and that delineates the Department of Aviation to promulgate regulation on takeoff and landings of political subdivisions. So what that all means is that we have, since July, have been working when that became technically final for us. We have been working on creating that. And that bill has us consult with industry and have representatives from different organizations. There's 4 key areas in that bill, if anyone wants to refer to that, but different sectors of the industry to include small and medium business, to include localities, to really make sure we encompass some regulation that everyone can live with and right, that really is helpful. And so it'll give guidance to our local governments and the localities of what they can and cannot do regarding takeoff and landings. And so industry is excited about that in the sense that they don't want patchwork. They don't want one county to do this and I go to the next county and I don't know what their regulation is and vice versa. And so it's going to give a kind of an even playing field. The way I like to look at it is you have federal regulation, right? And as long as you meet or exceed federal regulation in a state, it doesn't impede on federal regulation, you can do it, right, as a state. So that's what we're looking at. We want all localities to meet federal regulation first and foremost, and then we're going to look at what that looks like. And so why that's important in sharing this even today and all that is we will be opening that up for public comment. We are in the process of creating some language, and then we have an open comment period for that. So industry, citizens, your recreational flyer, your 107 flyer, any and everybody can share that and can put comments in there. And then from there, the unique part of this bill is that it's due out to the public as a final bill in December because it becomes an active bill and law. It becomes law January 1, 2021. So it won't wait until next fiscal year. It'll be calendar year. And so that's exciting because it also gives some guidance. Is right now it's like, I can't do this in this area, I can't do that. Then it also helps industry and it helps the recreational flyer and the 107 flyers as well. It gives them some more boundaries to fly within.
Yeah, knowing what
John, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say knowing what you can do is the biggest barrier, I think. But understandably, if we're on a technological frontier, right?
So it's actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to, this is John Eberhardt, I'd like to add a few remarks based on what Amber said, because, a couple of specific examples of what she was talking to. So, Michael, you just said knowing what you can do is one of the biggest barriers on a technological frontier. So
Right.
What's really interesting is, the flight information exchange was a result of that, right? People wanted more information to try to understand what the situation was on the ground, to try and have situational awareness. And as an authoritative SDSP, right, as Department of Aviation works through how something like House Bill 742 works, the fix was not designed with HB 742 in mind. It's only loosely coupled to it. But the state already has a single portal where a USS can go and get that data programmatically, or where the public or an operator can go and get it from the website. So to Amber's point, you can go to the Department of Aviation and what types of local advisories are in effect. And it really makes the state much more user-friendly because I think, Michael, to your point, you're providing people some clarity, right? You're providing people guidance. And what's really neat about that is, just from my perspective, that is the Virginia model here, right? The Virginia model is to provide clarity and guidance and to be open. And the other thing that's really neat is just how collaborative the model is here in Virginia, right? And we were talking about the Drone Up test in Danville, right? And how that was a partnership with CIT, and Amber advises CIT. So even though Amber wasn't involved directly with that test, her input was part of that test because the CIP team comes to Department of Aviation to get input. The flight information exchange is very much a collaborative effort, right? So even though Department of Aviation is leading it, CIT is involved, Virginia DOT is involved, Department of Emergency Management's involved, Department of Forestry, right? And it's all meant to be very collaborative and very open. And so I think that the kind of final thought that I'd like to share as someone who works a lot with the UAV is I just want to emphasize how much I see the Department of Aviation wanting to get this right. They want to get this right? They're not just trying to rush something through or push through a policy. They really want to get it right, and they're very open. To kind of quote, paraphrase, I'm going to date myself here and paraphrase in a car commercial from the 1980s. They're not your father's regulator, right? Yeah. It's really a very collaborative, open model. And I've watched as Amber has worked with industry and stakeholders and constituents and, really worked to balance those equities and get it right. And so I think the final thought I would say as someone who works with DOAV is, if you have questions, ideas, suggestions, Amber is one of the most responsive people I've ever worked with. So I'd strongly encourage you to reach out to DOAV and Amber. And yeah, sorry, Amber, I just probably just filled up your inbox with more communication. But I mean, really the desire to get it right is just so clear.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that I do agree. We certainly want to get it right and correct. And we want this to be a partnership and an open, collaborative, transparent project, whether it's Virginia Flight Information Exchange or it's our other upcoming projects. We all play different roles, right? I'm more of a state research background. I was a former airport director, so I have a vast different background, but I'm certainly not in the thick of industry right now or in the research or the data. And so we can't wear all the hats. And so we are so thankful to have the key players at the table, especially here on this team, and then the Virginia Department of Aviation UAS work group that kind of represents all of that.
So you can't wear all the hats, but how do you check their work? I'm always interested in, because as a regulator, you don't want to get it wrong, right? But
right.
that means you don't want to shut off opportunities that are there, but that means you also have to be able to know whether or not what you're being presented is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So how do you manage that?
Through a process. Personally, I have my own process. I like to work on it through open collaborative effort, gather all my information, set up a framework, and then I have milestones or questions from that. For example, I'll use 742 as kind of an example, right? So VML and VACO, which are the Virginia Association of Counties and the Municipal League, they are two key partners regarding that bill. We don't want to create a regulation that they can't live with and their counties can't live with. And so we certainly have sought their input. But at the end of the day, we have to seek the guidance and see what overall industry is doing, and then internationally as well, right? So we need to be on par with hitting our benchmarks. So we initially don't go out there and say, this is the Virginia Aviation's way or model. We have our initial notes. Then we compare it with what industry, what our citizens are saying, our constituents, and then what the rest of the world is saying. And then from there, we it's not a compromise, but there's certain areas like safety we are not going to we're just not going to budge on that. And there are some things that we can be more flexible about, and maybe it's timing or maybe it's certain key partners of who to include on round 1 and 2, right? So the Virginia Flight Information Exchange is another example. We have this incredible group of 11 organizations that are with us from the ground up. Drone responders, Department of Forestry, transportation, all of those that really forged what we have. And then from there, we're going to build upon that and bring in the other USS providers and those other things as well. So it's a collaborative effort, but we can take a step back and say, yes, we've got to be that body. We've got to be the enforcer, right? Because 742 is coming, and this is for us in Virginia and our department. This is kind of a big deal, considering we're going to be creating, probably getting that regulation, but also on the backside, you've got to enforce that. And so really sharing what that looks like is, it's a chance for us to further insert ourselves and further have people come to us and feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, and I'll also add a couple of examples, Michael, from the technical perspective, right? Because from the fix and from the engineering perspective, Amber mentioned the user group. So, there's an 11 organization user group that manages the requirements for fix. So even though DOAV are experts in aviation, right, they're not experts in law enforcement and public safety. So DOAV convened a group to help manage those requirements. In the same way that for the actual technical development, right, DOAV are experts in aviation, but they're not experts in information technology and software development. But by partnering with CIT, who are experts in information technology and software development, right, they're leveraging a relationship to make sure that things are done right. So when, as the technology partner, when we're delivering functionality, that functionality is actually validated and signed off by CIT because they have the IT expertise to look at it and say, yep, this is developed correctly. And yes, it aligns to those requirements that are coming from the users.
Great. Well, guys, it's almost time for us to do a demo of the fix. But before we kind of sign off on the audio portion and jump into that, any kind of final thoughts, final remarks? Any, what's holding the industry back? What excites you most in the industry? And then how could people get in touch if they have any follow-up questions to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing?
So John and Scott, John, I'll let you go first, and Scott, and then I'll kind of wrap up from there and then toss it back to you, CJ.
Okay. So I think I'll kind of add my final thought. Again, coming from the perspective of a data scientist, right, and an organization that's focused on integrating and sharing and making data more useful. What really excites me about our partnership with Department of Aviation and the Flight Information Exchange is the opportunity it presents, over the next year to really foster collaboration between and among state and local government with UAS operators, with USSs, to explore how these information assets can be used to create more efficient flight operations, more effective flight operations, and most importantly, safer flight operations, right? And I think, Michael, to your point about getting clarity, if this is done right, and I think the DOAV model is very likely to get it right. If this is done right, what you really do is you'll really accelerate the growth of the use of UAS in Virginia, because you'll help bring clarity and you'll foster collaboration. So that's what has me really excited about these collaborations.
Yeah, I echo what John said for sure. I think that the more engagement we get, as I said before, the more adoption we'll see. But it's going to go in that direction. And I think that Virginia and the Department of Aviation was, aware and or is aware and took the action that is necessary to be on top of that movement and to make sure that they get the answers correct as that happens. I've got 2 little kids, and they love when I fly my drone. They call it Daddy's robot, and they just nuts about it. And we go out to the country in Central Virginia, and get some great video of the mountains and stuff, and they have a blast. And who knows in 10 years what their day to day is going to be like with UAS and everything else. Driverless cars and driverless airplanes. It's wild. It's wild. So it's really exciting. You guys all know this. This is your podcast.
Yeah.
This is the fun stuff to think about and to see where it could go. So that's what keeps me going. When I've got calendars full of meetings. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think what's most exciting is to see people progress through the years, right? To see them start having this interest in unmanned systems in general and drones. So I kind of got my start. I know we didn't kind of talk about this a little bit. We kind of got my start at Middle Tennessee State University, and they were really standing up their unmanned systems UAS degree. And so I really got to see the groundwork of that and kind of be involved in that a little bit, to see that. And this past summer, I had the opportunity for one of the first times since I moved away in my college days to go back and really talk to them and see how it's progressed through the years. And some students I taught years ago getting married and being in industry, and them sharing about what it was like for them to first fly a drone and how it was so foreign 5 and 8 years ago and 10 years ago. But now they can just use the word drone or unmanned systems or aircraft, and people really understand what that means, and to really feel like this is a degree. Like, this is like something that people thought were so far-fetched and crazy. Like, I can get a degree in this and I can make a living. And it's interesting to see some of those students who are actually slightly, if not more successful than the other ones, who may have taken a different path. So I'm most excited about getting really to be in the thick of it, but also the teams I get to work on and the projects we get to work on collaboratively, not just with Virginia, but other states as well. And to really push what our unmanned systems could look like here in the United States, to include highways in the sky, to include these corridors we've been talking about, to really say, can I go to my local airport and hop on an Uber of the sky, so to speak, and fly over to Dulles? Can I what vertports can I use? Just to be involved in. We thought about the Jetsons growing up. I think that was that cartoon. I didn't watch a lot of TV, but that seems familiar. But how they had like the little flying cars and how that was so foreign, and that's never going to happen. But here we are today. We have Aurora Flight Services here in the state of Virginia who are doing just that, air taxi. And that's exciting. That is coming. It's scary. It's more scary to some people. But what I love about it and what excites me is to be able to educate somebody and that light bulb go off saying, this can be beneficial to me and I can use this, whether it's aerial photography, land surveying, whether it's, I don't want to drive from Richmond to Dulles or Reagan because that's horrible traffic. Let me just hop on this air taxi and be there in, I don't know what the flight time would be, but like 10 minutes versus 3 hours. It takes me an hour and a half to get home every day. That could be a 5-minute flight. I would love that. And so the future in our engagement and our young people excite me. To be able to be involved in that and really change industry in a meaningful, impactful way excites me the most. That was a long-winded answer, but it fires me up, and that really excites me.
Great. I really thank you all for being on today and for all the work that you're doing, from education to creating transparency and helping government bodies share this information with each other, learn from each other, not rebuild the wheel, and ultimately creating a sustainable industry in Virginia and across the country. So, a lot of the values that you guys have and a lot of the work that you're doing are values that are close to InterDrone's heart as well. So thank you guys again for being here. We'll be right back with a video demo of the Virginia Fix platform. So if you're just listening to the audio of this, definitely head over to the InterDrone YouTube channel and you can check that out. Thanks again to John, Scott, and Amber for being here. This podcast will be on Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever pods are casted. So thanks again, and we'll see everybody next week.